Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing really well. See that a lot of folks have already started checking in the comment section. We appreciate that. Um, so yeah, we have a lot of y'all want to know about poop, and we posted a comment about it the other day, and somebody was like, "Yeah." And so, just so happens, Jeff has a presentation on the mycotoxins, manure signals, health issues, what to look at, what you want your bird's poop to look like, how to know your bird is in top physical and nutritional condition without having to think about it. So, how are you, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm good. You guys cut into my beauty sleep, but that's all right. There's no better place to be right now. So
But I mean, you need that for sure.
I
Um,
know, I know. I'm fighting it. Old age
but
is
look,
right here.
we've got your favorite topic tonight.
Yeah, we get to talk shit for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
so
else you're gonna
yeah,
go talk about shit.
and so let me ask this. While we're talking about this, for those that have more than just game fowl, will some of the stuff that we see here apply to other animals, or is this
Yeah,
primarily going to be just for birds?
it's mostly for birds, but it does apply to other animals. So the general rules of thumb in all these, whether we're talking about mycotoxins, manure, or health issues, are universally applied. It displays a little bit different in other animals, but yeah, it's like it'll all fit together. It'll all fit together. But
Okay.
yeah, no, I mean, we can stop here and I can just tell everybody, go buy a jug of Corid and give it every day. And and that will not fix anything, but it sounds good on paper. So,
Yeah, so I've never used that.
me either.
Um, I do want to say this. Now that the information has some of it's been made public, I do want everybody on here that is a praying person. I'd like for y'all to keep Dwayne Ard in your prayers from South Carolina. His son had a very, very, very bad car wreck, and keep that family in your prayers. So, Jeff,
Sure.
tell us about shit.
Well, you can tell a lot by looking at shit. In fact, the last 2 weeks, I have a game fowl guy, birds in the keep, and he's been sending me pictures of shit every morning at about 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we evaluate, where that bird's at as far as dryness, emptiness, how fast it's moving through, because you need to be able to predict when they're going to dump out, right, to get them to the
Yeah.
right stage.
Right.
And so, he's actually on his. He's got his second group put together. Right now that and they're not his birds. That came from another guy who asked him to condition and put them and point them,
Right.
because he had been doing really well, at the shows. And so this guy, brought over I think 12 birds or something like that to, you know, uh, he brought over two shows for him to and completely different, right? So the difference of how they're managed and what they're fed, even before they go in, to the keep is really huge. The birds that the guy had of his own, it was much easier to manage the droppings, get them where we want them to be, get them emptied out, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy must be feeding complete shit feed. I mean, just I don't know. I have no idea, right? I'm asking that question, but they're holding feed. Their crop is still full. With the morning, so the morning feed is still almost in there, almost up till the evening feeding. This guy feeds twice a day, morning and evening, and they're just not, they're just not processing the feed well at all. So anyway, we're working through it. Little technique
Well,
things to try and whatever. But
what would cause that?
I mean, if the bird doesn't have the right, digestive bacteria, the gut pH is off. What we're actually worried about is that these birds that have all been shown before and have been given, shots, steroids and strychnine. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really hoping we're wrong, but the Nux vomica or the strychnine is going to wipe out pretty much everything in the bird's gut, right? So bringing that bird back around successfully for a second go, it's going to take a lot of time and patience to rebuild that gut bacteria. We call it flora, right? So, but the gut flora to get it back to where it needs to be a healthy bird and, be able to process feed at a known time is really tough. So, but some guys need those crutches. Hey, and I'm not condemning anybody. I'm just saying there's another way. There's a better way, right? When you get to be a really good feeder and a rooster man, and you can see, inside your bird, not just see your bird, things become a whole lot clearer. And this is for another show, right? We'll talk about this some other time, but not tonight. But it's messing them up with shots is really hard to overcome. So, in fact,
See
most of
that?
the guys that I hang out with, if they do that, they know the bird's wrecked pretty much for life, and they a lot of times won't even bring them home. They're a one-way bird because they know trying to straighten them out. It's okay though. It's all right. It's all right. I got a couple tricks up my sleeve. We're working on them. Try and keep you posted
Yeah, I
later
was
on
going to
down the
say
road.
that's a project that I definitely think would make a good show because a lot of people, before they discovered how to give their bird proper nutrition and take care of them that way, they probably tried some of that stuff. And now, hey, you're a one-time winner. I want to get you to be a two-time and a triple ace,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
I,
look,
I
it's
don't,
tough.
I don't want to give you that stuff that you're not going to come back from. One person says that you should be able to pick the crap up and throw it up against the wall and it should stick.
It's not totally wrong, right? I mean, most of the chicken manure that I see is too dry, right? It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really like a dropping that stacks high, and piles high. It should not be higher than it is wide. Let's put it that way. Okay. Um, it should always be wider at the dropping than it is tall. That should be, the height of a dropping really shouldn't, in a great world, when things are right, that dropping shouldn't be half, it shouldn't be half the height of what the diameter is. If everything's, if I'm getting the right amount of moisture in the bird, it's drinking right, the water's good quality, and and everything's clicking. Um, yeah, but that takes a lot of everything being right. But ideally, and we'll see some pictures of, you know, um, we'll see some pictures of, really good chicken poop and what they ought to look like, if we get through the slides and we get past the preamble of where we are now. So
I was going to
let's
say,
move it.
we're already getting questions. This one
I
says, do
know.
you believe in bacterial flushing? Is what they call it in the Philippines. They say it's for prevention, but they're already giving them antibiotics.
Yeah. And I'm not, I'm not a fan of routine antibiotics. Okay, so just so you know, I don't see the value in it. People do it as a preventative, and every time you do that, you wipe out all the bacteria in that gut. Sometimes it's actually more dangerous to wipe it out and start over than it is to just try and fix what you got going with something as simple as milk or buttermilk or like that. Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about bacterial flushing. Jen never talked to me about flushing the bacteria out of the gut, but the last thing you want to do is empty a bird of all their natural bacteria, because now they have no immunity or defenses to fight off if they're exposed to
Anything.
something nasty, right? So
Yeah.
the health of any creature is actually in the gut. So the more balanced and more stable you keep the digestive tract, the more they can fight off. So,
Got it. All right, here we go.
yeah, the guys can read it. We're going to talk about what a mycotoxin is and the effect, and this is going to be a new term for a lot of guys. Really, you just need to think of it more like food poisoning. When you ate that piece of chicken that's been in the fridge for about 3 days too long, yeah, that's a mycotoxin. Okay, so all right, we got a lot to cover, so let's get into it.
All right.
All right. So, just so everybody knows, right, what a mycotoxin is. And so, if you've seen mold on feed, you've seen mold on food, you've seen, mold on anything you might actually eat. Okay. It's not the mold. Okay. It's not the mold, not the fungus, not the, it's not that at all. What it is when a bacteria or a fungus or like that lives, as it dies, or even while it's living, they call it a secondary metabolite, but basically you might as well look at it as it's bacteria or fungus poop. Okay. It's the chemical component that's left behind after bacteria and fungi have lived and died. Okay. So it's the after effect. It is not tied directly to the living fungi or bacteria. It is tied to what is left behind. Okay. I can't push the button, buddy. It's on you.
Okay. All right. My bad.
All right. And look, I don't want to go through every one of these. It's an educational thing. But what we're going to focus more on are the grain mycotoxins.
Okay.
So things that happen in the field before the grain is ever harvested. And this is a very widespread issue, guys. So you can go to the BioMin website, and then for about 7 years now, they've been tracking corn and soybean samples from around the world for mycotoxins. Okay. So it's out there. They're finding anywhere from 70 to 80% of every field in every country, okay, has a level of mycotoxin. So most of the time, what we see, the number one is going to be the trichosense. Anyway, that top one, right? And also the first thing we typically see is the Don vomitoxin, right? So that is like our first warning sign that there might be something else. You guys aren't going to get this tested. Just know that they're there. Some of you have seen me recommend something called Redmond Clay. You can also use a product called Redmond Conditioner. Excellent for toxin binding. They will not do anything to slow the bird down. So if you have access to these products, adding just a small amount to your feed every day, all it is an active clay that is actually gathered from an ancient volcano site where the ash had fallen and turned into a clay. It's clean, food grade. They harvest it, they protect it. This stuff is excellent for binding to mycotoxins, right? It'll bind to everyone on that list: donvomitoxin, T2, zearalenone, fumonisin. It's excellent on aflatoxin. Most of our grains grown in the South have to be tested because of the heat and the humidity. Aflatoxins are a real issue once you get the further south you go, right? So the humidity, the heat and the humidity makes it really tough to get a good crop off. Even where you're at down there in Alabama, Georgia, Florida.
When a bird starts eating dirt, which one of these is present?
It like I said, the most common that we run into is the top one called Dawn, but I can't say that that's the only one. It depends on how wicked or what the growing conditions for the fusarium, right? So the fields are a fungus called fusarium, is where those mycotoxins are coming from. A lot of times it happens when the grain starts ripening and it's getting close to harvest. And then you get this little rain shower or something comes through, right? And it just screws up the entire ripening process of the grain. So, and then the fusarium loves it at that stage, right? If you go out in the field and you ever want to look for it, it's going to be, it's really easy to see on the small grains like wheat and barley. And it's kind of a pinkish looking, fungus that grows on there. As it dies off, it'll turn more to a black, but early stages are pink and late stages of fusarium are black. And just depending on what grain it's on and the growing conditions for the fungus, we can get donvomitoxin, we can get T2, we can get zearalenone. All of these are a possibility, and it just depends on, what the growing conditions are like. But
got it.
Just know that like 75 to 80% of the grains going into our feed system have some level of fusarium activity or had in the past, and it's leaving something behind. Now, this is completely legal. Don't go yell at your feed store. Don't go look, So, like donvomitoxin, the one that I see the most, it's actually, there's no guidance or legal restriction for a feed manufacturer to not use it. The government says, if you can believe what the government says, but up to 4 parts per million is safe for chickens. Well, I think that's a bunch of horse shit personally. And whenever I see a feed over 2, I start to see weird manure. And again, we're going to look at manure if we can get to it. So, all right. So the things I talked about: excess moisture, hot temperatures, sufficient oxygen, heavy hard rains, anything that causes damage to the crop where there's the presence of, that fungal spore.
So on this, by the stress factors, when you're talking about poor fertilization, that's like having one rooster with 50 hens. Right?
That's like having one rooster with 12 hens. Okay. There ain't too many roosters that can handle more than 8. There's a few. There's a few, but
that's what you mean by poor fertilization.
Right. And insects can carry this in, damage when they're harvesting, poor storage. There's a lot of things that play into this. So all these things are out of our control. I just need you to know,
it exists.
You
can put them in groups. You can put your breeders in pairs or trios, or maybe have a total of 4 in there, limited to that, to help with the fertilization part. And you can, there's things that we as good chicken people can do to help lower stress, but some of the stuff, if you're in the South, you can't make it not be 100 in the summertime.
Right. And like I said, so the number one that we're fighting is going to be Dawn T2 is a real unknown. Okay. So decreased hatchability, decreased egg production, right? These are just possibilities of what you may see. What worries me more is, gizzard lesions, are damage to the inside of the gizzard lining, decreased feed intake, feed refusal. And like I said, we're going to talk more about diarrhea and things like that. But basically, the slide's telling you that if you look at all the abbreviations and it gives you a guide there, and you guys can always come back and look at this, but hopefully you don't have to. But these toxins, depending on what you have, can really, it can mess with everything, right? So getting these things under control. Let's even back. Let's say this a different way. Your bird, if they would, even with a really low level of a mycotoxin, your bird can never ever be a true 100%. Okay, there's no way, right? Because it's fighting off this ache and pain and this little, slight metabolism difference, and it's, you can get them to 98%, you can get them 95%, but you're just going to be missing that last little edge, and there ain't nothing we can, there's little we can do about it other than what I already told you.
Okay. Can't always see them or smell them.
No, you will never actually see or smell them, right? I tell you what, one of the first times I ran into this, and this was a good old boy that up there in Hartselle, Alabama, right? Old Charlie called me one day, and he was spitting and sputtering as he could do. When he got pissed, he talked funny, right? I mean, he just carried on. And he goes, I don't know what's wrong with this damn feeding these chickens. They aren't growing, blah, blah, blah. He just went off on my ass, right? And I said, just calm down for a minute, Charlie. I said, tell me what you see, because I can't run down to Alabama and look at your chickens for you. I go, what are they sorting? Yeah. What are they sorting out? He goes, I don't know. I said, you go out and take a look and see what's on the ground around the feeders, right? He come back about an hour later. He goes, there's a whole damn ring of corn around that chicken feeder, right? I go, Charlie, you and I both know a chicken will never, ever waste a piece of corn. Ain't never going to happen. First thing they're looking for is that yellow chunk of gold. I mean, that they want that first. I said, you got a mycotoxin problem. He go, boy, you're full of shit. He goes, I said, Charlie, take a sample of the feed. You send it to the lab. If I'm wrong, I'll pay for the test. Okay. All right. So he gets a sample.
He never sent you a bill, did he?
No. He sent a sample up to the lab, and we had it checked out. They come back at 5 or 6 parts per million Don toxin, right? So he ordered in some fresh corn, made a fresh batch feed. Those chickens ate like he had starved them to death, right? They ate
because they freaking love corn,
and he never saw his crop get that full on those chickens, right? I mean, that it looked like they all swallowed a baseball, and everything turned around. Birds started doing good. That was the end of that. But chickens don't waste corn. So
this question is: charcoal a good binder? We talked about Redmond clay.
Yeah,
is charcoal a good binder as well?
Charcoal is right. Used at a nice low level. Charcoal is an excellent binder. If you can make your own charcoal, it's good, clean charcoal. You just not all charcoal is created equal, but charcoal, activated charcoal is good, right? So I used to use this as a prop. This is a half gallon, 2-quart mason jar. And that 2-quart mason jar will hold 1 million grains of sand. And it only takes 2 bad grains of sand in that jar to start making your chickens, lose their shit and not be, they're just kind of dull. They're a little dull. They're a little lethargic. The poop ain't what you think it ought to be, right? Then you run down to the store and you get cord and you give them cord. No, that didn't fix it. Then you worm their asses. That didn't fix it. Then you give them a shot of antibiotics and that didn't fix it, right? So now we got the bird thoroughly screwed up, okay, because we misread manure. But it only takes 2 grains of sand, common sand, in that jar to throw off your chickens, right? Mess up their digestive tract and just not let them be their best. Okay. And when you get too
that's
much,
very little too.
yeah. But when you start seeing birds making mud fever, picking up dirt, making mud fever, putting it in their water, they're trying to tell you that something that they're eating or being exposed to has got their gut hurting, right? Their gut's on fire, their digestive upset, right? Just like this flu bug that's been going around lately, got everybody running to the shitter. Yeah.
All right, tell me this. What lab, if somebody could, what lab could you send your chicken shit to get it checked out? Or your feed, if you want to have your feed checked for mycotoxins?
Yeah, you can't check the chicken manure, and the labs are getting less and less. I mean, we send all of our samples to Dairyland Labs up in Wisconsin, and so you have to check their website because they can do a quick test on it and tell you what's in there. Or they can give you the full-blown test that measures every one of those mycotoxins I showed on, showed on that earlier screen. It takes about a week to culture it. Here's the thing:
Okay.
you don't have a week. And if you learn how to read your birds and pull your head out of your back end, okay, you don't need to send it to the lab. They're going to tell you. Yeah, you start seeing mud fever, you start seeing a little bit of lethargy, like that bird's eye ain't clear, he's not on point, right? He's not as alert.
You don't have
These are pretty good warnings, but nobody has ever told most of the people in the show fowl world anything like what we just talked about. Okay, everybody jumps to the conclusion that they got coccidiosis or they got worms. Okay, then and it may not be that at all. So come on, man, I'm waiting for the poop pictures. Let's go. Let's get on to the shit. All right. So the different mycotoxins, you got alpha toxins, ochratoxins, trichothiocin. I can't say the word. Fumonisins are real known. Ergot pretty much is only on rye and wheat, and you're not going to see it too much in the south. And Don vomitoxin, like I said, is our first warning sign. That's the one we see first, okay, because that's the easiest one to form. When that level gets about 5 or 6, then I start looking at like T2, ochratoxin. I'm start looking for something else. And if you live way down in the south, I'm always looking for alpha toxin because that's always going to be a hot button for southern raised corn. Okay.
Got it.
Okay. So you can send it to New Jersey Feed Lab. They're really good. Like I said, this shit ain't cheap. So you can buy a whole lot of toxin binder for, what it costs to get this stuff tested. But we don't test for Dawn anymore. Not enough people were using the services. So they wanted to upgrade our equipment, another 2,500 or $3,000. We said, nah, not really worth it for us. So
got it. Here we go. Favorite section right here.
Yeah.
Before you get to talk
crazy.
about that,
we talk about shit. All right.
Can real quick, this person right here wants you to go over milk for coccidiosis for chicks, how often to give it, and how much. I see that question all the time.
Okay. Write this down, guys. Okay. Or come back and watch this 15 times. All right. Day 3, day 7, day 14, day 21, day 28. Okay.
Day
On day
3.
3, on day 3, because they have never seen this before, I want you to get those cheap aluminum pie plates like you'd get at the store for that pie, or cheap, store-bought pies come in. You can buy them there. They're cheap, right? Fill them about half full. Each plate's good for about 25, 30 chicks. Okay. Now leave it in there for 2 hours. Come back, remove the pie plate, and wash it out for the next time. You can reuse them. You don't have to throw them away. Just wash it out, put them someplace safe. Every other feeding after that, 7, 14, 21, 28, okay, you only give them what they'll clean up in 1 hour. Okay, just what they'll clean up in 1 hour. I guarantee when you come back out with those shiny aluminum pie plates, those birds know exactly what day it is and what you're coming for. And that milk ain't going to last long at all. All right. You don't feed milk all the time. You don't feed it all day long. Birds have a hard time digesting lactose and the things that are in milk. So you can actually cause diarrhea by overfeeding milk. Don't do that. Small amounts will go in. They slightly acidify the digestive tract, which the coccidiosis doesn't like. It also feeds the good bacteria in the gut that you want to live. Okay. It feeds them so that they're stronger and they don't give up space to coccidiosis. Okay. It's pretty simple. Look, I ain't making this shit up. If you message me, I'll send you a University of California out of Davis, where they recommended using milk to control coccidiosis in 1925. Okay. So this shit's been around for over 100 years. This ain't
And
new, and it ain't rocket science.
So best option would be raw milk.
Just any whole milk. Okay.
Then if you
Anything
can't get
below
that, whole milk.
Yeah. Right. Anything below 3% butter fat ain't milk. So don't give me 2%. Don't give me skim. Don't give me 1%. None of that other bullshit. Okay. Whole milk. All right. Don't be a cheap ass. Don't listen to your wife. Cholesterol is a good thing. I like mine anyway. All right. Look, manure is one of the best and quickest ways to tell what's going on in your bird, right? So if something changed, you change the feed, you change the environment, right? You get some rainy weather, they're living in mud. All these things are going to play into it, right? There's different kinds of healthy chicken poop. It all depends where your poop is coming from and what, so what you're feeding them is going to influence that color. So let's get into some poop. There you go. The inside of a chicken. Everybody needs to know what it looks like, right? Beak to crop, crop to gizzard, gizzard into the gut, and that eventually flows into the small intestinal tract. I do want everybody to take a look. You see the ceca? You look down, it's above the vent or the cloaca. There's 2 ceca glands that come off of the intestinal tract. So every now and then, those cecas will empty out, right? It's kind of like on a cycle. It's not a bad thing. It just has this really strange pasty. Most of the time, what I see is black, right? It'll be just tar black, and just don't freak out. The bird gets a little bit of a body fever, and instead of being 104, 105, it might be up at 107, 108. And the ceca will dump out. Doesn't mean the bird's sick. It ain't going to die. Do not buy Corid. Do not give it to the birds. Don't worm them. That's a crock of shit. This is a normal occurrence. Okay. But the ceca glands actually hold all the necessary bacteria that the bird uses for proper digestion. So as the feed or the food is passing by, some of it kind of pushes into the ceca. At the same time, some pushes back out, and it reseeds its own gut. Okay. So that's what that whole purpose is. And giving antibiotics for no reason, like the bird's not sick, but you think you need to do it because the guy down the road said you gotta give him antibiotics every month. Screw him. All right. That Sika is the secret to your bird's gut health right there. Okay. Just let it do its thing. It's the best defense you got for keeping that bird on track.
All right. Cool. Right here. Color.
Yeah.
Consistency and content. That's the
Yes,
three
sir.
C's of shit.
Yep. Yep. You heard it here
Okay.
first. Yep.
And do we have pictures? Oh, pictures. Here we are.
See, look, perfectly. All three of these, right, are just perfectly normal. When you put the birds on some fresh green grass, the manure's going to get green for a while, right? It's not a thing. And depending on how much water intake the bird had, whether it's coming from eating grass, whether it's drinking out of the cup, whatever. Okay. But you see the one on the right and on the left. Remember, I talked about I don't want the manure more than I don't want the manure more than half high than it is wide, and these are perfect examples. Okay, people show me this really dry shit, and it's stacking up. And it's like, man, we got to get more water into those birds. Something is missing. All right, next slide, buddy.
See, what gets me is like my Rhode Island Red. That son of a gun. If you look in their pen, there's like a pile that's about 2 feet wide, and it's like they'll build that up in a couple of weeks. So does that mean that they spend too much time chilling on their perch?
Yeah, they're on the roost. If they don't have anything else to do,
yeah,
then they're gonna hang out on the roost. And roost poop will be a little bit drier because they're not drinking through the night. From the time they hit the roost until they come off the roost in the morning, right? So that bird's just a touch dehydrated. And the first thing they want to do when they come off the roost is get a drink of really good fresh water. Okay, it's hard to get it to them, but water is the most important thing first thing in the morning when that bird wakes up. So somehow we got to make sure we got good water there first thing in the morning. But roost poop will be a little taller than I like it to be. So
I do clean it up because it gets excessive, and I don't like to take the chance of, them messing in it or anything like that because I don't want it to get in their feed and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, roost poop. That don't look good.
It's not good, but remember I was talking about Sika? It's still healthy, right? Remember I was talking about that black tarry look all the way over on the right? That's usually what I see. Right? But okay, this isn't coccidiosis, guys. This isn't enteritis. This isn't, right? This is going to happen. You're going to see this. Don't freak out. Don't knee-jerk react and do something stupid, okay? I see this color poop all the time. I look at more chicken shit than anybody on the show tonight. I can guarantee it.
If your birds, like, let's say you live in a really humid climate and your birds drink, on average, they drink twice the amount of water. I mean, twice the amount of food that they eat. So they eat 4 ounces, they drink 8. Well, let's say they're drinking 12, 13 ounces a day because it's so hot and so humid. If their poop is watery at that point, is that a problem?
No.
Because they're drinking so much water?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Right. Now, you're never going to see that much of a variation. I know the point you were trying to make. Here's the thing. His water consumption was at like 70 or 80 degree day. It's going to be twice what you feed him. right? So if you're feeding, I really hope there's not too many guys feeding 4 ounces to game fowl because they're going to get fat. But let's say 4 ounces, 8 ounces of water. Now, even in like peak heat of summer, you're probably going to see 10, maybe 11 ounces of water drank. Okay. If it's good quality, it's cool, that sort of thing. In the winter, instead of 8, it'll probably drop down to 6. So I rarely see more than a 2-ounce variance in water consumption through all the seasons. Even if you're, way up in Canada and it's freezing cold, it's going to be, it's 5.5, 6 ounces is what they're really trying to get into them if they can, even when it's cold. And even down there in Alabama at 110 degrees, right? I rarely see them take more than 10, occasionally 11. I mean, if it's really, heat index is like 120 or something, then they might drink up to 12, but that's a rare occurrence.
Okay. But even if in that rare occurrence, if their poop has a lot of water in it, that don't mean your bird's sick. That just means your bird's drinking a lot of water, right?
Right. It's the combination of colors, and if we keep going through the slides instead of yik-yakking, we're going to get to it, right? So, that manure pile on the right is probably roost poop, but it's a little drier, a little higher than I want it to be. Again, this is still all healthy manure, right? So sometimes you're going to get a little more white out of it, and that's urate. It's a little bit of calcium and excess protein that's coming out. I don't like to see a lot of urate. Urate should never really cover more than 25% of the total dropping under normal circumstances. Okay. That's not, but these are still completely normal droppings, right?
So if you see more than, like, say, in the section where you've got the 3 piles of poop, the one on the top, that bird's got too much calcium in its diet.
Well, it does.
Would that be fair?
So this is summertime poop where birds drank a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it's flushing more through its kidneys.
Right.
So you're likely to see less solids and more white in that case. Right. This is probably like a midday dropping. You already fed them in the morning. There's really not a lot passing through the digestive tract to come out with it. Right. So it's going to have more fluid, more moisture. I don't get concerned about any of these. Right.
So
these
they're just browning out and emptying out.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. It's just timing. Okay. So occasionally, right, what this slide's really pushing is, and if you guys zoom in on it or look at it really close, you see the undigested grain in it. Yeah, this is where somebody's feeding scratch grain, somebody's feeding whole grain, and they're not giving grit to enable the bird to actually break it down and utilize the nutrients. So they're just, crapping out money, right?
So they don't get enough grit because you got rocks in the ground?
Well, that's what a lot of people think, but actually, if you go out there and dig you up about 1 square foot, about 1 inch down, you can't, because the chicken ain't going deeper than that looking for a rock, right? You screen that out and tell me how many rocks you got that are roughly 1/4 inch or 5/16 of an inch, which is what a mature bird needs, right? There ain't enough rocks.
Mine go through it like in spurts. It's not like a consistent thing, because sometimes I have to fill up their cups. Once a week, and sometimes twice a week. So
it ain't gonna break the bank,
No, I mean, if you buy it, if you've got it, most people have a large amount of fowl, like to me, it's cheaper by the pound to buy 50-pound bag of grit than it is to buy the cute little 5-pound bags they got at Tractor Supply. So
for sure. Yeah, I
that's
wouldn't be
what I
buying
do.
5-pound bags of anything, but we've had multiple studies done that show a 7 to 10% increase in feed efficiency, right? Just by offering grit. And the average adult bird is going to consume between 1.5 and 2 ounces of grit every month. So it's about 1.5 pounds of grit per bird per year. It doesn't go bad. It doesn't have a shelf life. It ain't ever going to rot away, right? So you can stockpile it, get what you need for the next 10 freaking years. It don't matter. And it'll be just fine. And okay, still healthy manure, right? So people get all worried about this, right? And this is going to be more of that temperature thing we were just talking about, where it's pretty much all water and urate coming out. So, or the bird drank more. When it gets hot, they actually eat less, right? They'll slow down on appetite a little bit, but they're going to drink more. So this is to be expected. So.
I was going to say this picture on the right, that in the summertime, I would give that poop a thumbs up because it's got that solid green line in it. In the wintertime, I'd watch that bird and see what I saw tomorrow, because that might not be all that good in the wintertime. Let's see. Somebody says I toss a cup of charcoal on occasion over my 5-gallon feed every now and then to try to prevent coxy.
Coxy, yeah. It's not going to do a huge amount for coxy, because coxy is actually a single-celled parasite. So look, I think what you're doing is a great idea. I'm not going to take that away from you. So I have no problem with doing that. You can do that about once a month if you like, and that's a good thing. Whether you want to use activated charcoal, whether you want to use one of the clays I talked about earlier, that's fine. Coxy, okay, so in a mature bird, once you get past 4 months old, coxy should never be a thing for an adult bird, right? I mean, you almost have to put them in the worst living conditions ever and stress them for coxy to show up. And right. I mean, they have a natural immunity to it after they pretty much, when they get past 4 months old, they're pretty well good to go. If you see coxy past 4 months old, it's more of an environmental issue. It's not, it's not the birds, right? They have an immune natural.
Chicken tender problem, not a chicken problem.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay, so you guys see like gut wall slime on the top right. The bird isn't eating, right? And this is the slime that's coming off of the intestinal and gut wall. Not good. A little bit of red in it. Got a little bit of coccidiosis going on maybe. For sure, bottom right, where you see bright red in spots and specks, that's a coccidiosis dropping. Not good. Top left. So when I start to see the yellows come in, or some of the weird greens mixed in with the white like that in the top left. So what this is really telling me is the bird is off feed. It's not eating correctly. Okay. And it something got in there. Now this could be, it's usually another bacteria, pathogenic type bacteria, whether it's E. coli, salmonella, something like that, Clostridium. Usually your yellow is a Clostridium. And most of the time, I can't say this is always, it could come in with the feed, but When I see birds digging a hole in the ground and eating what's underneath there, that's usually where they're picking up Clostridium. Like when the birds dig a pothole in the yard and they like to scratch at the bottom and eat at that bottom edge, that's where your Clostridium's coming from. So Clostridium likes to live in an area without oxygen where it's packed in, right? And there's like spilled feed on top packed into the ground, things like that, and then the birds working from underneath. That Clostridium will come up and feed on that either undigested grain or spilled grain on the ground, right? And then you get enough moisture in that pen, that Clostridium is going to start feeding on that spilled grain or undigested grain, and then if the bird's digging around in the dirt and eats it, you're going to end up with that yellow sulfur looking manure. And so it's a thing, and it's not really, it doesn't have to be an antibiotic thing at this point, although antibiotics could be one of the, I would do a part dose maybe of antibiotics. I could also use just a touch of copper sulfate in their water. Big thing is I got to get the bird back on feed. So whatever you treat it with, follow it up with some milk. Give the bird an ounce of milk or something like that. Not a lot. You can take some feed, like, some good grains or something like that. Soak it in the milk, feed that. The smell of the milk is going to get the bird eating again. And the milk itself, like I said earlier, is going to get the digestive tract back, back in line and get the bird healthy again, right? Or you could use yogurt. Actually, yogurt is pretty excellent as long as it's hasn't been pasteurized after it's made yogurt. You want it with the live culture in it. A tablespoon of yogurt for about 3 days ought to get the bird back on track.
So you made the comment a while ago about copper sulfate. How do you feel about using copper sulfate in the water periodically?
Look, if I don't see weird manures like this, why am I giving copper sulfate? I'm not just going to give copper sulfate because I think it's a good thing to do, right? I'll tell you what, the going rate is a half a teaspoon of copper sulfate in a gallon of water, right? That's what most guys are talking about. Tell you what, you mix some up, you taste it, you get back to me because it tastes like crap. Every time you put copper sulfate and some of this other weird shit in their water, you're going to reduce how much water they're actually drinking, right? So if you don't have something to treat, like you don't have severe coccidiosis, you don't have, parasites or something like that, I don't get the copper sulfate out unless I've got an emergency. Okay. But you do what you want. They're your birds, man. I'm not pulling the copper sulfate out because the last thing I ever want to do is restrict how much water that bird can drink. Because when it's sick, it'll keep drinking even when it quits eating. Okay. So my last chance of fixing a bird and getting it healthy might be through the water.
Got it.
So don't piss around with the water. Yeah, yellow, foamy, greasy, tar-like, everything's got a different, everything means something different, right? So, but you're going to see blood if it's coccidiosis, or necrotic enteritis will sometimes be blood, but oftentimes will be that yellow or runny.
Okay.
There's a chance of a viral infection. It's really unusual for the bird to get a gut viral infection, but it's possible.
Now, if you got worms, you'll see that in their crap, right?
Yeah, but how many guys they're going to go out there and pick up, fresh drop and then put it on a flat piece of cardboard or something with a putty knife and spread it out and look at it really close. When you got worms,
that's one thing that gets me. Like guys will spend $100 on a bottle of pills and shove them down their birds' throats once a month for the heck of it, but they won't take a stick, pick up some manure and smear it out on a piece of cardboard and look and see if they got worms. but then they also complain about how expensive food is.
Look, I've been hanging around the game fowl community now for coming up on 6 years. I've been doing chickens for 30, right? But I've been doing show fowl, game fowl, all right? And man, when I come over into the show fowl, game fowl world, I thought I made a wrong turn because, man, I was listening. Oh, you got to worm them every month. You got to worm them every 6 weeks. You got to worm them, I was like, holy shit, people, don't worm them. Don't worm them, right? You feed grit, you put them on fresh ground, they're fine. Okay. and I heard somebody talk about chicks are born with parasites. Well, that's a crock of shit. They ain't born with nothing. Their mom didn't give them worms and their mom didn't give them coccidiosis. When they pop out of that eggshell, they're clean. Okay. They are clean. There ain't nothing there. There might be a touch of coccidiosis from mom in that digestive tract, but it's supposed to be there. Okay. That is the natural immunity builder for that chick. Okay. Don't screw around with it. Just feed them good, keep them clean. They'll be fine. Anyway, things you can do when something's off. Did you cover that? All right.
This right here.
Yeah. Of course, we've already talked about it. I mean, walk the flock, check the birds on a daily basis, observation, seeing things early is pretty awesome. I work a lot with people who avoid antibiotics or chemical treatments. So what we keep in our health kit on the other side is, good apple cider vinegar, garlic tincture. There's the recipe. Make your own. Don't be a lazy piece of shit. Just make it. It's easy. It's cheap. And it works wonders. It is a great antibiotic replacement. And for things like Mattocks or any time their immune system's challenged, get you some vitamin E oil, and we can just put it right on top of their drinking water. They'll chase it around because it's oily and it shines and it glistens in the sun. So they'll get it. You just put it on top of their drinking water. All right. We're running out of time, buddy. We're at an hour. Do you want to finish it? Do you want to take some questions and finish this some other day?
So I don't see a whole lot of questions over there, even though we have so many people watching. So I think how much more is it here?
I don't know.
All right. So let's
get through it.
Let's get through it.
Coccidiosis is considered a bacterial infection, but it's not. It's actually a single-celled called an oocyst. It's a single-celled organism that functions more like a parasite, and it attaches to the intestinal wall. It kind of burrows in, lays its eggs, and when they hatch and as it's growing, it actually completely bursts and blows that cell apart, right? So it just blows it up, just like a stick of dynamite in the side of a gut wall. That's where you get the blood from.
I'll say that's where the blood comes from.
All right. So early signs the bird's going to act a little depressed. The other thing you see is going to drink a little more water. The feathers won't lay right. Like the feathers won't lay slick and like you like to see them. They'll look ruffled, like you took a bird and just kind of ruffled it up with your hands and the feathers haven't got back in place. That's usually what I see. You're going to have the runny manure, but that's because they're drinking more water. And sometimes they try to kind of soothe their gut. And I've seen birds eat, pine shavings, sawdust, and bedding to calm all that down. So, get them on clean ground, get them on clean bedding. Like we talked about the milk earlier, what they'll clean up in an hour. If you have cocci, I'd run it for 5 days. And only in really severe cases, like I've got a bunch of it in a flock, am I going to do the copper sulfate in the drinking water? But that is the last. Don't jump to the end. Okay. Don't go,
because that actually do more harm than good.
Well,
if
it
it hasn't
works.
got to that point.
Right. The copper sulfate works, but I'd much rather use some milk, clean up the bedding or where they're living, and it's going to be a whole lot nicer. All right, what you got? Just pictures. You can blow them up if you like, but the intestines will become all puffy and enlarged. And if you look at that bottom left picture, you can see where the coccy's just in there, kind of blowing up the whole intestinal wall. These are some really old pictures from back in the day when DeKalb, the DeKalb company, was actually into poultry health when they had the genetics. So a lot of the modern breeds actually, a lot of like the modern Langhen, the sex link type stuff. DeKalb was one of the original breeders, owners in that genetic world. But a friend gave me a really old health book that DeKalb had, and that's where these are coming from. But all right, necrotic enteritis going to look. This is a true bacterial infection, and it has a lot of the same symptoms as coccidiosis, but you don't have the blood in the manure. You're going to have, that runny manure. It's going to be off colored. You might see that clear mucousy, greenish looking stuff we saw. If it's Clostridium, which most of the time what I'm fighting is Clostridium, it'll be that sulfury yellow, but the bird's just not going to feel like eating. It's going to go off feed, and it's going to, so again, if I give it some milk or some grain soaked in milk, it's going to eat that because it smells really good. It tastes really good. And milk actually will kind of soothe that gut wall where it's all torn up from either bacteria or cocci. And it keeps the bird eating, right? I get the bird back on feed. I give it a chance to heal. Now, severe cocci or severe necrotic enteritis, that damage to the intestinal wall never fully repairs. Okay, you have damaged the bird for life. So just know that, right? I would never take that one to the show because I don't think it's ever going to have the stamina that you want. It's not really going to be the bird, right? Now, the genetics are still there. So if you didn't cull it and you needed it as a backup rooster for breeding just to save some genetics, fine, I get it. But just know that that bird is never, ever, it cannot ever be 100%, right? So
not going to have the energy.
Now, you see that bright yellow manure I was talking about, or bright yellow slime, like was in the manure earlier? Yeah, that's more than likely a Clostridium infection right there.
Okay.
CITES doesn't really affect game fowl too much, but if your biddies get cold, get rained on, like before they're 6 weeks old, if they're out running around free ranging, and they get rained on a cold night, you can cause something that's similar to hypothermia in that bird, and the brain's going to send a signal to the heart to beat faster, and to speed up digestion, to warm it up. It's trying to warm itself up, right? So, and if this doesn't happen, there's a back pressure between the liver and the right ventricle of the heart, and eventually it starts pushing plasma, blood plasma into the body cavity. So, if you open the bird up, you're going to see mostly clear, slightly yellow, kind of like pea color fluid come out of the abdomen. If you ever see that, that's actually ascites. But you can't fix it once they have it.
Looks like that.
You'll see the abdomen becomes the fancy word is distended, but it'll be swollen. It'll be kind of hot and feel like it's full of fluid right before the bird dies. So again, most of these health issues are more in commercial birds, but if you ever see a bird actually on its back with its feet up or feet, upward, the bird died of a heart attack. That's the only way a bird dies on its back is a heart attack. unless you found it after the raccoon was chewing on it. But you find a fresh dead bird with no damage on his back, it died of a heart attack. And your only warning signs are going to be like that deep purple looking head, like when their head gets really deep purple going towards black, that's a sign that their circulatory system is not functioning.
Yeah.
Not functioning. Yeah.
All right. Coraza.
Well, coraza is part of your MG mycoplasm family.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't cure it. So keeping your air quality up. You can give some extra vitamin E, to try and get ahead of it. But once you got this, because it's viral, you're just not.
Ain't going anywhere.
This is one I would definitely call. I wouldn't hang on to a bird if I thought it had coryza. Once you start hearing raspy rattling in the throat, you start to see stuff coming out of the sinuses in the eyes, in the eye, or the head puffing up from sinus type stuff. Yeah, I mean, your safest bet, because you have expensive birds. I would just it's time to call it.
Don't risk the rest of your flock.
Give it to your enemy. But yeah, if you start seeing the swollen eye around like that, then that's a pretty good sign.
All right.
That's part of that Mycoplasma gallisepticum, which is a bacteria infection. And you're going to see
Sneezing,
it mostly
runny
coming
eyes,
out. Yeah. Bubbly eyes.
Basically a sinus infection.
But it's, and you're just not going to beat it. So,
all right.
Internal view of what it happens inside the bird. You get some of that foamy liquid, mostly around the air sacs and the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
But if
they'll drown.
And look, most gamefowl guys don't open their birds up to see why they died anyway, which really pisses me off because, you can't tell me anything. I love it. Guys contact me. Man, I had some birds die. Well, okay, what's the symptoms? I don't know. Well, what position were they in? I don't know. Did you open one up? No. Well, shit, go away. You can't tell me nothing. I can't help you.
So say you can't. Yeah. Viral arthritis.
You're not going to see. So viral arthritis is the hock joint will get all hot, swollen, and jelly filled. And it comes when a bird's eating spilled feed off the ground. They have to actually ingest the virus, and it comes off the ground. So another strong point for why we don't feed on the ground, right there, Kerry?
Yep, there you go.
Botulism. Remember I was talking about chickens digging a hole and eating out of the bottom of it?
Yep.
So botulism comes from the Clostridium bacteria, and it's just a slow blood poisoning. But towards the end, botulism, the telltale for botulism is we kind of call it church neck. The old man in church who can't stay awake, right? He's falling asleep during the sermon. Yeah. So their head, it looks like they're sleeping, and their head will slowly fall forward towards the ground. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll catch themselves and lift it back up. But, towards the end, they won't. But this is definitely a side effect of a toxin. And
got it.
I can't cure it. There you go. Limber neck botulism. The guys do fight foul pox. Yeah. And, if you made that garlic tincture that I was talking about, you can do that. If you didn't, you can take 2 cloves of garlic, you bruise it, lay it on the counter, take a knife sideways and bruise it, then just chop it up coarse, put it in 2 cloves and 5 gallons of water, let it soak at least overnight, and then start serving it. We can also speed this up with 2 or 3 drops of vitamin E oil. But wherever you got mosquitoes, you got foul pox. And you guys in the South can get wet pox, and that is nasty. You can lose birds from it. Up here, we don't typically.
This past summer, I had some of my birds, not all of my birds, which, my chicken yard's pretty well spread out. And then one part, I do have a lot more mosquitoes than I do in another. And so some of them got fowl pox, and I was really frustrated. And I got some CEG. It's not cheap, but it's one of those Dr. Paul's products, and I mixed it with their water, and it was cleared up in about a week. I was real impressed with the garlic stuff. It worked really well in clearing that up. So, yeah.
I can't see the top. What is that on the corner? Is this Merrick's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when the ammonia level's high.
Oh, the ammonia. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to see it. Most guys, I even have a hard time seeing it, but you'll start to see that clouding over on the surface of the eye when there's too much ammonia. If it goes too long, it ends up being more of a permanent blindness. But here's the thing with the game fowl out in drop pens or other pens, we rarely have an ammonia issue. It would be
you
more
shouldn't have that.
Right. It'd be more in a confined space, like where the biddies will be. Or if you're not cleaning out your fly pens right, you could have it in there. But all right, what else you got?
I mean, if you can smell it, it's like 5 times the level it should be. Here's Merrick's right here.
Yeah, and if you don't open birds up, it's kind of hard to see it. You can tell by how they're acting, but these are kind of indicators. Merrick's and adult birds, they just really hunch up, and they don't. They become lethargic and they don't want to do anything. They don't want to move. Again, I hear guys misdiagnosing this and think it's worms, and they worm the shit out of them, and the bird dies anyway. So,
from the time a bird is exposed to Merrick's, how long before they start showing symptoms?
It'll take at least 7 to 14 days. It has to build up in the system, right? And it affects the nervous system primarily.
7 to 14 days from exposure.
Yeah.
That's another one that's, like you said, really commonly misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
So they're
younger birds I see are right leg paralysis. And this is when, under 16 weeks old. After 16, I don't see it in the leg. But when they're developing, anywhere from week 3, from 3 weeks old all the way up to probably 12 weeks old, if I see a right leg only paralyzed, then
pretty sure it's got it.
Yeah. And if you open up the inner thigh on that bird, just do it gently, and you pull the muscles apart in that inner thigh, right? And you're headed for the bone. You want to get down near the bone, and there's this white, kind of looks like dental floss, the bigger dental floss, right? Like dental floss tape. But there's a white string. It's a milky white string that runs right just inside that inner thigh under the muscle. And that's actually the sciatic nerve, which most of us have heard that word before. And sciatic nerve will either have a tumor growing on it, or it'll have these weird white rings around it, right? So it's, I've seen that more times than I like, but only on commercial birds, not on, I haven't seen it on game fowl yet.
Got it.
Nitralized guy's feet, I was talking to Dougie about mites earlier because, the northern fowl mite is a problem.
Yeah.
It's really simple to take care of, but nobody wants to do it the easy way. And you add a little bit of sulfur, powdered sulfur, to their feed, and you leave it in there year round. The mites don't like to feed on your chickens. They'll find some other place to be.
I will say that if you live on a well, and you have well water, you will probably never see this. Roundworms.
Well, you have high sulfur down there, right?
Oh, yeah.
High sulfur well, yes, you probably won't see it. But if you have good water, you can see it, right? And it comes in with the wild birds, comes in with the rats and the mice and the other rodents will carry them as well. It's like I said, just put some sulfur, little. I mean, when I say little,
pinch,
like 1 ounce will do a 5-gallon bucket of feed. I have to do the math on it, but it's not much, right? You could literally put it on with a spice shaker. You wait till your wife empties a spice shaker and put powdered sulfur in there, and you're talking about a shake a day, right? That's it per bird.
Got it. Here's a pretty
roundworms.
Yeah.
They happen.
Dehydration.
Yeah. I don't see it very often, but if water's really bad, this is more at the chick stage.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maintain
your brooder. Yep.
All right. Somebody asked a while ago about how to contact Jeff. There's his email right there. I will post that in the comment section if that's okay with you, Jeff.
I don't care.
Send him an email if you got any questions. Sorry that we went over. We were pretty close to the end of the presentation that he had, so I know that a lot of people ask a lot of questions about all of these different diseases and how to get rid of them and how to know if you have them and stuff like that. So the last question we're going to do today, Jeff, is if you have that problem, any of those problems with those diseases, what's the best way to sanitize the area where the affected bird was before you put more birds on it?
I'm assuming we're talking about an outside on the dirt bird.
Yep.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it really hard with some high calcium lime. I'm going to make it white and I'm going to let it set. All right. And then I'm going to rake it after about 3 days. I'm going to rake that in and I'm going to make it white again. It's the same bag of high calcium lime. Right. And I like to give at least 14 days just to break the cycle. Usually 14 days will break the cycle on most bacteria and viruses, as long as there's not a host there before you put a bird back in on it. Indoor, we're just using a really good sanitizing solution, whether it's bleach. I like pine salt, but it's, either one will work. You just want a really good, strong sanitizer. The key is a rest. Okay. Giving it 10 to 14 days before you put another bird back on it. Okay. It has a hard time living without a host. Almost everything goes away if you give it 2 weeks. So before you shut it down, these guys need to know, look, I am traveling. I will be on the road somewhere between here and Alaska starting next Monday. So I'm going to do my best to be on every show on every Monday night. But if you're missing me, I'm sorry. So I got to head out there and do a presentation.
He's got to pay the bills, y'all. He's got to pay his bills. I did put his email address in there. Email him, email rapidoroosterusa@gmail.com. Either one. Be patient with us. This is the busy season. As we get back to you, we will do it as quick as possible. Next week, we've got Peter Chapman on here. He's going to be our guest, so make sure you tune in as we chat with him about how he does his program. Till next week, we'll see you guys later.